Welcome back to Dawn's Tailor Made. Now, here is my newborn. Now this size, let's just check. It does say newborn and it says up to 11 pounds or 5 kilograms. So this is how I've been gauging my pattern size. So if you have to hand either an old bib or some item of clothing that you can use as a guide, what I discovered was, sorry, not done one of these up for a very long time. What I discovered was that the neck hole is about the same size as my glass. So that's what I'm using as my guide, okay? And I was thinking, what size paper do, piece of paper, if anyone has paper, then usually your notepads, either they're lined or plain like this piece is. Most people have an A4 sheet of paper. So the idea is you fold this in half and you take your glass. Now my leaves are this way, okay? My fold is that way. And you just place your glass down in the corner. Just pop my glasses back on. Down in the corner and you draw. But just all we want to do is round off this corner so that it's not a sharp corner. It makes it easier if you're sewing to not have to turn a corner, okay? And then from the top, we need to measure down. I'll put my ruler in here. Put that in there. 2 1/4 centimetres from the top of your piece of paper. So that's about there. Okay, and that's on the outside again. It's on the leaves. And then bring in your glass. Let's pop that there so I can see all the way across. And about halfway across, that's where we're going to put the neck hole. Okay? So, let's just pull that in. Now this pattern has evolved as I've been sewing the bibs and trying to decide the best way to make them and to make them fit. So all I'm doing there is I'm just taking off that corner. And now I'm going to cut out my circle. The bibs that I remember the most were some over the neck bibs that I had, that I found were really good taking on and off quickly. But I don't have any stretched binding to put around the neckline. So that was my first thought. But because I don't have any, I thought, well, how else can we secure this bib to a newborn without having to use any ties, because you want to be able to take it off quickly without using any snaps. And my idea was to pop a little buttonhole on one side and thread the other side through. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pop that on the... Now this is a measuring gauge. I don't know how many people have seen one of these before. It has centimetres on one side and inches on the other. And what I decided to do was I'm going to put it to the 2-inch mark, okay? And I'm going to pop it against where my circle is. And I'm just going to draw a line. Okay, move it further round. Drawing a line so I know that this curve as I'm going round is going to be 2 inches from where I've drawn my circle with my glass. Now if you don't have one of these, I will show you that you can just use a normal ruler. So the same thing, you can just take the end, move it across, move your ruler around, make a mark, and then when you connect all of these up, you will find that you have 2 inches all the way around. So the initial bib that I had was I took that all the way around, and then all I did was I just curved it so that when this is around baby's neck, so remember this is a newborn size, so when this is around baby's neck, you just secure it at the back like that. Now if you wanted to put snaps on there, then you could, but I don't have any. The only thing I have is the little old silver snaps, and you have to sew those on, and I was a bit worried that if they came off, they might cause a choking hazard. So what I decided to do was take this side and make a little bit of a point. Now you can just cut this freehand, and then what I thought is I could insert this side into a buttonhole, which most machines do come with a buttonhole foot, and who doesn't need practice using their buttonhole foot? And now you can either pop that in that way, pop that in this way, and that will just stay. So this is different with fabric. It will stay behind baby's head, and you haven't got anything hard at the back of the newborn's head. Now obviously if you're making this for an older child and they can pull the bib, that is just going to come off, okay? But we're making a newborn one, so that was my idea, okay? So when my children were little, quite often if I couldn't grab a bib, the first thing that I would grab would be muslin cloth. And I think quite often I would fold the muslin over in half, pop it on my shoulder, pop it around the baby when I was winding them, and I have found that these held quite a lot of liquid. So what I've decided to do is 2 layers of muslin. So I'm just going to pop that down, matching up. Now the best way to do this when you're cutting, obviously I've just separated these, the best way to do this when you are cutting is to have all your pieces together and then place your pattern on top. And if you are going to do it that way, make sure, so this is the front of my fabric, make sure that when you lay your fabric down, it is wrong sides together, because what you're going to do, you're going to sew all the way around, leaving a gap, and then you're going to turn it the right side out. So we need to make sure that we are matching up. Now this would be perfectly matched if you laid all your fabric pieces down, you placed your pattern on the top, you cut around, and yours would all be perfectly matched. Now obviously I've just moved mine to demonstrate, so mine are slightly off now. Now as you all know, anyone has touched muslin cloth, it does spread, it does move, okay? It doesn't stay where you want it to, because obviously of the creased nature of it. So this isn't going to be perfectly matched, but as long as I enclose all of those edges, it will be fine. Now I'm just using a soft cotton on the top, and then there are 2 layers of muslin in the back, and I think that will be enough thickness. You don't want anything too heavy sitting around baby's neck. You just want something that's going to hold the liquid, and then you take it out and then you put it in the wash. If you're using some sort of wadding behind there, which you are welcome to do, what you might find is it won't dry as quickly. So I was thinking of something that's going to hold a little bit of liquid. You can whip it off, put it in the wash, hang it up. It will dry before the next day, and then you can use it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew using 1/4 of an inch all the way round, okay? And then I'm going to leave a little bit here as my turning gap. So the way that I mark that is I use a different pin so that I know where my turning gap is. Because otherwise, as lots of you have followed this channel before, I will forget. Let's move that one down. Make sure that your turning gap is on a straight piece. So when you are top stitching, you will cover this up, okay? So as I said, I'm going to use 1/4 of an inch going all the way around, but I'm going to leave this gap and I'm going to turn it right sides out. Now I am using a knit foot today. Now I know I'm not using knits, but there are 3 layers here, and with the muslin, just the nature of the fabric, it is creased, it isn't smooth, and I just want to make sure that it's not going to shift underneath my feet. So I should just bring the machine in. There we go. Now, for anyone that hasn't changed their foot before, there is a little button at the back of most machines, and all it happens is your foot will drop down. I'll do that again. All that happens is your foot just drops off, and then you place your new foot on. Now, this foot, as some of the feet do have these, the darning foot, the free motion foot has one of these, and all you do is where you screw in or unscrew to take out your needle, that is where your foot, this bit has to rest on the top of there, and then your foot just connects to that little bar under here. So your whole foot is now sticking at the back, okay? Now there are different types of knit foot or stretch foot, but this is what mine looks like. Yours might look slightly different. Now I'm just going to turn the machine off, default stitch, back to the beginning. So I am using my first stitch. So when you turn your machine on, that is the stitch that your machine will go to. And so that I know that where my turning gap is, I'm going to start at this end. Now I'm placing my fabric, the top fabric, not the muslin, because as I said, the muslin has moved a little bit. And I'm hoping, if I roll this down, this foot is going to behave, because sometimes it catches. Right, I'm just going to pop the needle down. Yes, no, that's okay. So needle down, and then I'm just going to go all the way around my fabric with my foot on my edge, on the edge, just like this. Now your knit foot might be slightly different, okay? Because this isn't my the top stitch, I'm going to actually use a longer stitch. So this is more of a basting stitch, because we are going to sew this and secure it on the top afterwards. Okay, so I will sew quite slowly because this is a very noisy foot. So this is where, if you're watching this on playback or you're watching on YouTube, you can actually speed through this bit. Now when you're turning your corner, just pull your fabric round. Don't go too fast, but don't go too slow, because forming a perfect curve, you need some speed there. If it feels like it's going to go off the edge, you can just lift and turn. And you're just trying to keep that fabric touching the edge of that foot all the time. And now I'm going to be doing your inside curve. So again, lying your fabric down and just turning it, just keeping it as smooth as you can. Now I'm using a cream because that's the fabric that I wanted, the colour I wanted to use for my top stitch. But you could use a coordinating fabric or a contrasting fabric, a thread, sorry, if you wanted to. Now I'm just going to go back to the top again. Now remember, we've got a point. If you turned yours into a point, you may have a round edge up here. Now I'm just going to move that pin because we do not sew over pins. And I'm going to go up to the edge, stop with the needle down, turn, and just pivot around. Lining up my fabric again and just going all the way back to the bottom where we started. Now if you're looking at my pin cushion, there is a tutorial. We did make one of these. These are little bubble quilts. So I just made very, very tiny ones. Now the idea is I don't even look anymore. I just know that this is on my machine and I know where it is, I know that it's secure, and when I take my pins out I just pop it straight in. So if you wanted to make yourself one, I will pop a link in the description so that you can go back and check out that tutorial. All you need to do, if you've got any type of pincushion that you're already using, what I do is I've just got a piece of elastic that goes all the way around my machine, and it just secures my pincushion. So if you have a pincushion that's, so I've got a little one here, all I would do is just pop a pincushion just on here, and it holds everything for me. So I've got my clips here, and it even holds my seam unripper. We never need to be too far from our seam unripper, do we? And the other item that you can see is my sewing mat, and that holds everything else for me, just so that I know where everything is. Now, needle back up, and there I have left my turning gap. Okay, just going to nip off these threads. Put them in my thread catcher, so I try not to drop any threads on the floor. Now, where you've sewn curves, the best way to go around a curve is to snip. Now, if you have, many of you will know, I do have pinking shears. I'm going to use a sharper pair. I do have pinking shears, but when I did use the pinking shears, I actually found that the curves didn't come out as smooth. So all I'm doing is just snipping in. Now, because my muslin slipped, now as I said, when you cut out yours, make sure that you're cutting your fabrics all together and you are not then moving them like I did, because now my muslin has grown. Now, I am not going to snip where our turning gap is, okay? And then I'm just going to snip on these curves at the bottom. Now, if you did want to make this bigger for a child, another child, for an older child, all you would have to do is extend your pattern, and I will show you that in just a second. Here's my other curves at the top, just snipping all the way around. Again, if you're watching this on replay or you're watching this on YouTube, you've probably seen somebody snipping before, so if you go to the timestamps that will be there, you can skip this bit and go to the turning bit. There we go, now push the machine out a little bit. So all you would have to do if you wanted to make this longer or wider, you would cut your pattern in half. So you would cut this here, and then you would open it out to make it wider, or you would cut it that way and you could make it longer. If you know the child that you're making it for, you can ask the parents to measure the neck size, or one that they've already got, another one, and then you could figure out the size that you would need if you wanted it to be a surprise. Then this is the way that I found to make it, and then you can keep that surprise. You haven't got to ask them for any measurements. Now I have, when you're buying fat quarters, quite often you'll get a plain and you'll get a couple of different patterns. Now with this group of fat quarters, I have got the blue that you can see in the grass. I have got the pink that you can see in the sheep's cheeks. There was a white with it, and then there was another sheep pattern. Okay, so if you wanted to make a gift, then buying this these colours, coordinating colours, fat quarters, would be a great way of making sure that everything matched, and then you could make other items to go with this. I mean, you could make baby hats, you could make all sorts of things, and then it would all coordinate. And then what you could do is make some bias tape and sew it together as a ribbon, and then you could wrap everything up and everything would be matching and coordinating. It would be a beautiful gift. Now make sure when you're turning that you're only going into your top layer, okay? You're not going into the second layer of your muslin, if that is what you used. So I'm going to get this top end, because that's the bit that's going to be the hardest to pull through. And I'm going to take that through and pulling the rest out. So if you've got some sort of pokey tool, it would be very useful now. Now what I like to use is my seam unripper, because we always use our seam unripper for things that are usually frustrating and make us a little bit sad. Now all I'm doing is I'm putting that in, and then I'm just pushing it down the seam, okay, just to make sure that all comes out. But I think it's quite nice to use our seam unripper for something that is enjoyable, and turning something out, checking your stitches, checking that you've sewn all the way around is quite a nice thing. So to use your seam unripper for something nice. Now obviously if you were making this for a toddler and you had extended your pattern, your seam unripper might not be long enough. So whatever you usually use to turn it, a knitting needle, some sort of chopstick, anything like that. Now when I get to my corners, I keep an old, you can see it's bent, I keep an old sewing machine needle because they are much stronger, and that is how I pull my corners out. Making sure again that I'm in the top layer and just pushing that seam unripper just on all the seams, just to make sure that all those seams are smooth. Now I'm not going to iron this. I am sure when Mum gets this, the last thing she's going to be ironing is baby bibs, okay? And I quite like the soft effect of not having it ironed, okay? And of course when you've got the muslin on the back, that doesn't lie flat anyway. So I'm just going to fold this in, and I'm going to finger crease it, and that will give us our straight line. And then we need to find the straight line of our muslin, folding that top layer over, matching it, and popping a pin in, because we do need to put a top stitch on to sew up that gap. You could use your clips here if you wanted to. Just the last bit. Now the muslin is stretching because of the crease nature of it. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a wiggle to make it behave. There we go. Now with this being secure now, I'm not going to use my knit foot. I am just going to use my normal foot. Okay, so let's move this across. Bring the machine back in. There we go. Now I always try and keep my feet. I do have a little drawer down here that you can't see. I did do a sewing tour, so some of you will have seen it. But I always try and put my feet away. And when I take my normal foot off, I always try and know where it is. Don't ever put it too far away from me, because the last thing you want to lose is that one. So now all we're going to do is going to top stitch all the way around, machine off, back on again, so you know that it's true, it's where it should be, and then you can choose what length of top stitch you want to sew. So you can pop that on there, okay, and then actually on the inside. So what I'm doing is I'm laying the fabric up against so this is my clear foot. You do get these, this is the same foot that your machine will come with, but yours will be a silver one. You should have the option in your little boxes that you should have a clear version as well. So I can see through here, and I know that that's matching up on the outside, and it's going to give me a very small seam. Now this is the width. I don't need to mess with the width. I just need to find the length. So I'm going to take this up to a 5. Okay, and that's just going to secure those stitches all the way around. I can just see I haven't quite caught that other layer in there. So I'm going to fold that over. If that happens to you, don't worry. Just fold that piece over. Now what you could do is go back and go back through the turning gap and over sew that. I don't have time, obviously this being a live video, so what I am going to do is I'm going to put pins in here, and I'll make sure that as I'm going through the edge, all I'm going to do is catch that piece. So there's a good tip there. Check around to make sure you haven't lost any, you haven't got any other gaps. Okay, so needle down. I'm not going to backstitch because I'm going to come back over this because I want it to be as smooth as possible, because this is a gift and I want it to be as neat as it can be. And I'm just going to remove all the pins. Now, as I said, I'm not even looking, I just know that that is there. Okay, just making sure that it's lined up with the inside of my foot. I'm just going to go all the way around. Now, as I said, if you are happy with your stitching, you could do a contrasting stitch here. Just wriggle that bit out. So maybe, I mean, the reason I bought this fabric, we didn't know if we were getting a granddaughter or a grandson. So there is a little bit of pink in here, there is a little bit of blue in here. Some new parents, they may prefer a red or a yellow, but as this is a gift, I'm sure they would appreciate whatever colour that you chose. My daughter does actually like the bolder colours, but this is a fabric I bought way before we were making any decisions about colours, so I know she's going to love it no matter what. So we're just doing the inside curve now, and then as you remember from the beginning, I said I was going to use my buttonhole foot, which will be a good lesson for everyone. And as I said, we all need practice with buttonholes. Just turning on that last bit now. So I'll be putting my buttonhole foot on. Now, I always go back to my instruction booklet when I'm putting on a buttonhole, using the buttonhole foot, because it is just a good habit to get into, that when you're changing to something that you don't do all the time, I mean, I certainly don't sew buttonholes all the time, but what I discovered in my book, and I don't know if yours is the same, there are 4 or 5 pages of buttonhole instructions. So I've heard other people say this: do not lose your manual, because you don't know when you will need to refer to it. So just moving the string back. So there is our bib. And now, as I said, the idea is that this is going to fit through the little buttonhole and just secure itself behind baby's head. Okay, now because we have the camera this way now, I can show you, and it isn't going to mess with your eyes. Okay, so there are my buttonhole feet guide, but if I didn't realise, I mean, I read this obviously when I first started, so here are the different instructions, but it goes on and on for, I've got different buttonhole feet here, and there are more and more instructions as you go over. And what you can do is you can use this, that's how you put on a button, so you can actually use the button, you can actually put the button on with your machine, but it also, you use it for darning as well. So I'm going to be having a little practice with that when I've got some spare time. So always make sure that you refer to your instructions. Now, I did do a practice buttonhole because just because you've done one before doesn't mean it's going to have the same reaction to different fabric that you're using. So I did use 3 layers to make sure that it was going to work. Now, I did actually go off the edge here, and I've done it in a light colour, so I've gone over it in blue to show you what size. So it's a good idea to know how big you want it. If I was putting it that way, it wouldn't fit. But I am going to put it in lengthways. So that will go in and then fold backwards. Okay, so I need to make sure that when I start, this is a good guide. So when you are practicing, you can find the perfect place for your buttonhole. So my perfect position is going to be there. Okay, so I'll put that in. And I'll bring in my buttonhole foot. Now, for those of you that haven't used your buttonhole foot before, as I said, it will be in your instructions if your machine comes with a buttonhole foot. If it doesn't, hopefully this is going to be a little bit of a quick lesson on how to use it. Now, as we already have done, try not to drop my glasses off the table. What you do is you just press the button at the back, and your foot, the last foot that you use, will just fall off. As I said, always put it somewhere. Don't just discard it, because the amount of times I've wasted trying to find my button at my foot that obviously you need all of the time, and I've just put it down, and mine is a clear foot and it's very hard to see. Now, as with all feet, they have a little bar here, okay, the ones that attach that way, and what you need to do is you need to lift up your lever and then just pop your bar in the right place, and it just picks it up by itself. Okay, it's really easy. And then when you want to pop it off, just press that button and it just pops off. You will need to lift your lever up to pull it out though, because it is quite thick. Now, the best way is to pop your button in here, and then this moves up, backwards and forwards to whatever size that you want. Now, I'm not using a button, but I know that that is the length that I want. Okay, so you move it backwards and forwards. As I said, pop the button in here, and then it will give you the perfect size. Now, the thing that I quite often forget, so okay, I lift that up, pop that down. The thing that I quite often forget is there is a little lever back here, and you'll see it coming down. Now that has to be down. The amount of times that I think, right, I've done everything, I've put the machine on the right number, and then I forget this bit. And what happens is that stops it here, okay? It goes between these two places, and it knows how wide, how long you want it. If you forget that step, you will just carry on. So the best thing is to do a practice run, and then it won't matter if you do that on that one, because you'll then remember and you think, right, I need to make sure I do that for the next one. Now you need something very thin. You pop your needle down, needle back up, lift up your foot, and your thread will have come down to the bottom, okay? And then you pull them both out. Now with normal feet, quite often you've got a gap here. But on this one you haven't. On your darning foot you don't have a gap either. So this is the best way, okay, to pop any thread through. So needle down, needle back up, and then just scoot it underneath something thin, and then it will be in the right place. So your foot, when it works, it starts at the front and it goes back. So don't put your fabric in this way, because it will come off. So make sure, as I said, practice and then you'll know. So I need it to go about there. So I put that little mark in. I'm going to take that pin out. I'm going to make sure that it's straight. Okay. And I've popped it down. So now I'm going to go to the machine, and what number do I want? I would like a 16. So I'm going to move it all the way up. Okay, now everything should be set. Now, we're doing a live. This might not work for no reason other than the fact that we're doing a live, okay? So I'll put the needle down, and I'm just going to press start. and it's worked. So what happens is it just goes back first. Now it's quite light, this one. So this is why I drew this in. So what it's doing the back, this side here. It will go all the way up to the end. Not very exciting watching buttonhole feet. Unless it's your first time, and then it can be quite exciting. And then what happens is this black, as I said, this is the black button. And what it does, it stops where you've asked it to. It comes all the way back down the other side, and then it does a crisscross, which is, if you were sewing a buttonhole because you don't have a buttonhole foot for your machine, that is how you would sew a buttonhole. You would pop a piece of thread down, you would over sew all the way up, and then you'd pop another piece of thread down and you'd over sew all the way up again, and then you would cut it through the centre. And now it's going back up to the top. Now if you were using a contrasting thread to go all the way around, then you would be using the same contrasting thread on your buttonhole. It might make it quite a nice feature actually. It's nearly done. It will stop at the other end, and then it does a few stitches enclosing the top, and then it stops, and then it tells you that it's done. Okay, so pop that up, and then it just goes back. Pop your needle up, pull your fabric out, and then if you're not sewing another one, I would do this now to remind you, because otherwise you're going to forget. So pushing that back up, machine off, back to your default stitch, and then drop your foot off. Okay, now I've done this many times where I've taken this off, I've put my old foot back on, and then I've forgotten to come out of buttonhole mode, and then I start sewing, and what happens is the needle will hit the foot, and then you've got to change your needle. So I highly advise that you don't do that. Learn by my mistakes. That's what we like to do here at Dawn's Tailor Made. So I'm going to nip off those two threads, and then I do have the one that I started with, and then nip off the two threads at the back. There we go. And then the best way to do this is to pop your seam unripper in and then push. Okay, and then I get a little bit nervous, so what I actually do is I cut the rest up to the other end, and then the idea is this goes in here and then just sits behind baby's head. There's no hard button, there's no fastener. Okay, you can make it smaller or bigger depending on the size that you want. Now if you wanted to, you could put another buttonhole in, you could tuck that back in if you wanted to. But I just think that's a very quick way. You can get this off really quickly if you needed to. And as I said, because it's quite thin, it's going to be absorbent because it's got the muslin layers on the back and the soft cotton on the front. So it's going to absorb lots of milk or all the other delightful things that babies like to give us. And then you can just pop it in the wash. So I hope that's helped you. As I said, you can make it for a bigger, make a bigger size for an older child. You could even go smaller if you wanted to, if you've got a very teeny tiny newborn. So our newborn is, she was 7'4", so she's a little bit bigger than that now. So I think this would be a perfect size. And as I said, I'm going to make a matching one. So I've got coordinating with this colour, another sheep and a white. So I'm going to make her 5. Make some binding, and I will wrap it up, and then she'll have it as a gift. I will post some pictures to show you what the gift is going to look like. So thank you for joining Dawn's Tailor Made today, and I will see you again soon. Bye.